Hi friends, welcome back to Playing Tribute to Apollo Justice Ace Attorney. Turnabout Succession, last case of the game, where we are jumping into court. We found a few things. We found more things than I thought that we were going to find because Phoenix was very clear on not being allowed to talk to people that were related to the case, but we were able to talk to our client. And we actually did get a little bit of a conversation with the reporter that was there at the time of the crime as well. So, yeah. We have some information. We gathered some evidence, and we got some weird circumstances to, pursue. So, let's get started. Good morning. So, you're Vera, right? I'm Trucy Wright. That's Wright with a W. But not Wright, right? We're on your side. You can tell us anything, please. Good morning. She speaks! Not bad. But I think you'd do better with a little smile, you know? You're so pretty. You need to sell yourself, you know? Trucy, let's take it easy for starters. Thank you for taking my case. Well, that is a smile. I like your little teddy bear overalls. Okay, well, that's a start, I guess. She's doing her nails again. Here she goes with the nail polish again. That's great, really. It's so cultured. Want to try? Ooh, really? Girls. Well, they're bonding. The victim, Drew Measham, was a forger, and a stolen painting was found at his studio. A life of crime, really. Maybe one that led to his death. Well, we will now begin the trial of Vera Measham. Is the judge okay? His voice is all raspy, and he's looking around all nervous-like. The repercussions of today's trial will most likely be felt for a long time, and may indeed alter our legal system forever. Today is a test of the jurist system, and the first step toward a new order in our courts. Taddy's secret mission. The jurists will function like a jury. It's hoped that their inclusion will help the courts to better reflect the people's will. Why aren't there any jurists in the courtroom? 3 closed-circuit cameras watch this courtroom at all times. The jurists have access to everything that transpires. Jurists! Judge Well and Judge Cool. Now see here, Prosecutor Gap. I was going to say that. My apologies, Herr Judge. Jurists, today, judge today's trial coolly, if you would be so kind. The jurists are unbound by the letter of the law. They don't affect the trial with evidence, but by their feelings. And we're about to find out just what effect they're going to have. Very well. Prosecutor Gavin, the details of the case, if you would. The victim is the painter Drew Measham. He was killed in his own studio. His coffee was poisoned. By whom, you ask? By none other than the defendant, Vera Measham.
Objection!
There wasn't any poison in the coffee. Achtung! Someone has been doing their homework. Indeed, poison was not present in the coffee, but on the mug itself. The mug. Residue was found on the rim, I see. The autopsy report describes the manner of our victim's death. The court accepts this as evidence. According to this report, the victim's death was caused by atroquinine poisoning, a chemical compound that does not occur naturally. Lethal dosage is a mere 0.002 milligrams. A touch of atroquinine in the body is the touch of the reaper's scythe. Poetic. Let's take a look at that. Okay, pretty, simple. Self-explanatory. Very well. Prosecutor Gaffin, you may present your witness. I have for you today a simple man for a simple case. A man who witnessed the murder in its entirety. I wouldn't call him a simple man. That journalist, no doubt. The witness will state his name and occupation. Ah, right! Well, for starters, my name's Spark Brussel. My job is a lone observer of the world. In other words, a freelance journalist, right? If you don't mind, I'd like to state something here for the record. Yes, Mr. Brussel. I dislike conclusions, specifically the jumping to aspect of conclusions. Preconceptions make Park Sandbox of endless desert waste. End quote. But you are a journalist. You said so yourself yesterday. Well, that's true, yes. But you must understand I stand before you today a man with a dream. I'm offering you my testimony in exchange for exclusive rights to the story. Scoop turns Mr. Brussel into that Mr. Brussel. End quote. Let's hear your testimony then, shall we? Simple case, eh, Gavin? For me, the jury is still out. I visited the studio around 9 o'clock that night to do an interview. The first outsider to enter the atelier? Journalistic history made, end quote. I've never seen that word before. His daughter brought us coffee right after we started. And you know what happened next? Star falls, end quote. No one else entered the room besides her the whole time. That does sound like a simple case. Unless you were the one who poisoned him. What are you saying, Judge? Need I remind you the cameras are rolling today? I felt the need to be a bit dramatic. You didn't do it, did you? Maybe do a thing like that? No, come on. That's like newsmaker making the news, end quote. Or even contemporary witch hunt, end quote. I know. Wild accusations rock courtroom, end quote. Rock indeed. Prosecutor Gavin sure looks like he's having fun. I'm so happy for him. I think he just likes all the attention on him. He does well for this particular case. Apollo is not into that, though. Very well, Mr. Justice, your cross-examination, please. Right, yeah. Let's get some more information. 9 o'clock at night? Isn't that a little late for an interview? If the great painter Drew Measham says come at 9, believe you me, I go at 9. The first, and as it turned out, last interview with such a prolific painter. Right. Can you tell us what it was like when you arrived? You were the first reporter ever in Drew's studio. Posterity will look back on that night as a turning point in journalistic history. A basically insignificant step for all mankind. But a giant step for that Brussel guy. End quote. If no one in the outside ever had access to the studio, then it would serve to reason that the deed was done by an insider. By which he means Vera did it. So how'd the epoch-making interview go? Would you mind being a little more specific? Ooh-wee! Let me tell you, I enjoy cuppa. In fact, it all began when I was in 3rd grade. No, wait, 4th grade. That's not what I meant. I believe I know what hair forehead is driving at. In this coffee, the victim was served. Did anyone other than the defendant touch it? Right, that's what I was going to say, really. Well, now, if you got a question to ask, you best straight up ask it. That's what I tell all the new recruits, several times if necessary. Write for a grade schooler. That's my motto. Which isn't to say I can only write grade school level stuff. Who touched the coffee? Dunno. I was in the back looking at the studio's equipment when she served it. And what happened next? And you know what happened next. Star falls, end quote. Yeah, okay. What's this about a star falling? Star falls, huh? It's like an old telegram. Send money. Over. Zowie! You don't know? That's like a journalism code word. Important personage passes away. A star falls. Get it? But there's no gravity in space, is there? I wouldn't think stars could fall, really. Does this matter? Oh boy, this is good stuff. Good stuff. How about star breaks? Nah, lacks punch. I know. Star dies. Nah, lacks imagination. Of course, you could go with Drew dies, straight to the point. I like it. I think we need to hear about something a little more substantial. The moment of death, sure. About when Mr. Mission passed away. Oh boy, what a scene that was. He puts his coffee mug down with a crash, right? Yes, and then? Then, cold finger of death touches his spine. Life's flame sputters and falls. So cold was that touch, he could do naught but tremble uncontrollably. Actually, Life's flame's a little tired. Life's river froze over? Yes, that's a go. I think he's starting his article already. Could you describe that a little more simply? Well, as you can imagine, I was pretty surprised. He hit the floor, as they say. Artist seizure his final performance. End quote. Atroquinine paralyzes the central nervous system. The body arches back like a bow. Limbs tremble. The throat burns. There's quite enough of that. Some of us just want to be able to sleep tonight. Oh, yeah, well, I want details. Lots of juicy details. For that, you can listen to our last year's hit single, Atroquinine, My Love, by the Gaviniers. Available at all major music outlets. The point here is that the victim died of atroquinine's poisoning. Well, Mr. Justice, how did you find that testimony? It's important. Well, as an account of the moment of the victim's death, I'd say it's very important. Please add it to the testimony. Very well. The court requests the witness add this to account to his testimony. Didn't Emma say something about atroquinine taking a while to... Yeah, slow acting. So I'm not too sure about this. I was almost using the reporter's voice. You say it was definitely death by poison. How can you be so sure? Hey, look, I'm a journalist. I've seen a lot of things, and I've had more than my share of experiences with so-called poisonings. Man eats fishy fish, goes bye-bye. End quote. Food poisoning doesn't count. Should I get him to talk about something else? No? Okay. I think I have to present this. Objection! I do not have to present that. Sorry. Starting off early, guys. Can you say that for sure? For sure, I'm sure. Drew Studio isn't a big place, kiddo. I know it if someone else had come in. What if they had been hiding in there from before? Objection! Even if someone had been hiding in the studio, they hardly could have poisoned that mug without anyone noticing. You think I, Spark Busho, would miss something as obvious as that? No way! Sure makes it sound exciting. I guess that's his job. There's only one moment we need to focus on, really. The moment when Drew Mission died? Exactly. There has to be something there. Okay, well, it wasn't right. So you drank the coffee that Vera served you, too? Of course! When someone serves you coffee, you drink it. That's what my old boss always used to say. Never did get what he meant by it, though. But you're still alive, which is to say you didn't die. Of course not! No point falling before you're a star. End quote. It's not exactly what I was getting at. What were you getting at, then? You know the poison was on the brim, not the coffee. Oh, yes. There were 2 cups on the tray she brought. And one of the cups had Drew's signature painted on the side. No chance the guest would take that one by mistake, I guess. Oh, Mr. Justice, was that testimony important? Sure. We're talking about the coffee the witness drank. I'd say it's important. Very well, please add it to your testimony. Okay. But I'm not dead yet. You're sure you drank the coffee? Oh, yes, quite. I gulped it down. Felt that sweet scorch in my throat. But you say the victim took one sip and fell over. And you still kept drinking. Of course! Drink your coffee when it's hot. Never when it's not. That's what my old boss used to always say. I never really knew what he meant by it. Yeah. You say Mr. Measham had the coffee too. But did you actually see him drink the coffee? Of course! He who sees it wins, but he who says it wins bigger. He who sees it wins, but he who says it wins bigger, end quote. I live in a man sees dog eat and writes... man sees dog eat dog and writes about it world. Yet... Yeah. I guess I can't say I saw him drink it, really. He had one so-called sip, if that. Man puts lip to mug, drinks, end quotes. That poison is quite virulent, I hear. My stomach did a so-called somersault. Since I gulped down that coffee without so much as a second glance at it. Wait, maybe something's there, some kind of so-called trick. Anyone want to venture a guess for the record? Does this guy have a pause button? Mr. Justice? The victim drank his coffee, then immediately fell over. There it is. You can go to press with that one. Your Honor, this is a vital piece of information. Please add it to the testimony. Okay, here it is. This is where the issue is. Had one sip, then the next moment, he was on the floor. Now I can present this. Objection! You know what I have a problem with? A particular property of the poison used, atroquinine. Oh, Prosecutor Gavin was quite clear about the poison. A lethal dosage of 0.002 milligrams paralyzes the central nervous system. If you drank that, even you, Mr. Justice, would be reduced to a quivering pile. Why are you using me as an example? Unfortunately, we weren't told everything. There was a vital omission in Prosecutor Gavin's information. An omission? Atroquinine is as virulent as he says. But death doesn't come upon ingestion. Not immediately. That's because atroquinine is slow-acting. Slow-acting? What? According to one of the forensic scientists. It's one of the most virulent poisons, but is absorbed into the body astonishingly slowly. It takes at least 15 minutes from the time of ingestion to adverse side effects to show. If we were supposed the moment Mr. Measham sipped the coffee was when he sealed his fate, then he would still have had time left to enjoy his last cup of joe. Look at that back sprite of him. Oh my goodness. Order. What is the meaning of this? If what the defense is correct, why, that contradicts the entire testimony we just heard. Well, Mr. Rushell, anything to say? On the record? Slow-acting. It was virulent, all right. Even then, it had already begun digging his claws into the journalist. He's working on a scoop.
Objection!
It's Rushell, yeah? Herr Rushell, let's take a trip back down memory lane. Huh? Did the victim really die the instant he took a sip? Think it over. This is vital. You know what I think? I think that was a not-so-subliminal suggestion. End quote. I admit it does cause a problem if he died when you say he died. I would be forced to say Auf Wiedersehen to my civil case. And you would be forced to say farewell to your article. Come again! You can't write a story based on conjecture, can you? And as the case drags on, other reporters will pick up the scent. And you'll be forced to kiss your exclusive scoop goodbye. Scoop. Scoop. Gavin, what are you up to, man? Look, wait, just wait a second. Just 1 second. We're waiting, out with it. I think I just recalled a so-called important detail. A revival of recollection, end quote. A story survival, end quote. Attorney utterly confused, end quote. Actually, I did notice something when I visited the studio. I'd heard of poison that takes its sweet time, see? But not what I've been saying for the last few minutes, apparently. Mr. Russell, are you saying you noticed something that explains what happened? You bet I am. The antidote for a poisonous contradiction. End quote, you might say. Or I still have no idea what you're talking about. End quote, I might say. I figured it out, but only after an in-depth interview. See, thanks to my journalism skills, I know who poisoned that coffee. Order! As far as I can tell, the witness is standing by his testimony that Mr. Measham died the instant after he drank. Of course I'm standing by my testimony, and my dream of exclusive rights to the story. Ugh, I suppose it was too much to hope for. What was? Of course he wouldn't choose a simple case. Not him. Him? Phoenix Wright, who else? Achtung, Herr Russell. Report for us, if you would. What is it that you noticed? Phoenix said that it was going to be simple. This court is a critical trial in the justice system. I'm afraid no room for doubt is permissible. You will testify to the court about what you noticed. When I arrived at the studio, Mr. Measham was at his desk. He seemed to be writing a letter, but he quickly sealed the envelope. I thought nothing of it at the time, of course. Now that I think about it, what if he was writing a suicide note? Suicide note. Yes, he had the look on his face. Man's face inscrutable as a quadratic equation. End quote. Suicide? Poor Mr. Measham. But that means Vera is innocent. Would someone commit suicide in the middle of an interview? Oh. Very well, you may begin your cross-examination. Also, we know what the letter was that he put away. Oh, wait, no. We don't. I'm thinking of the other letter. But if he was writing it, then it wouldn't be that letter. So he put a letter away when he saw you? Early reporter gets worm, end quote. And that's my secret. I'm not sure I follow. It's the night of the interview. I arrive 15 minutes ahead of schedule. The handle turns, the door opens, I barge in. Are you sure that's okay to do? I mean, isn't that unlawful entry, really? Mr. Measham sure seemed to think so. You should have seen him. He crammed his letter in that yellow envelope as fast as he could. I know his secret when I spot one, and that was one. It does seem significant. Oh, well, Mr. Justice. I wonder, does that have the ring of something important? The defense finds his testimony vital, Your Honor. Very well, present his testimony then. Hey, why not? My account comes free of charge. Okay, there it is. I was like, okay, just because it was a yellow envelope doesn't mean anything, but him saying it was left at the crime scene, that's where the problem is. As it just so happens, there was a single letter in a desk drawer at the scene. In a red envelope. What? Prosecutor Gavin. Yes. Was a yellow envelope found at the scene of the crime? Unfortunately, no. But Herr Forehead, it's easy to mistake the color of an envelope. I guess. But not this envelope. You see, it was postmarked already, 7 years ago. Well, Mr. Russell, I can't explain that. Drew, right? He wanted to get that letter in an envelope pronto. Get it out of sight of my beady eyes, right? So he grabbed the nearest envelope and crammed away. And what about the whole red and yellow envelope contradiction, chump? Well, Mr. Justice, have you anything to say to the witness's claim? That night, the victim put a letter that he had been writing in a red envelope. No. Again, it wasn't his writing. That's impossible. Ah, I like your expression. So full of confidence. It's simple, really. As it just so happens, the defense team investigated the contents of this envelope. With, the assistance of a forensic scientist. What? Note that this letter is addressed to Drew Misham. Oh? Why would he address a letter to himself? Let alone send a suicide note to himself. I've been scooped! Order, order, order! Mr. Brushel, can you explain this to the court? Oh, my. How could I have forgotten? I suppose this happens to the best of us. Reporter gets old, forgets lots. End quote. I'm still waiting for an explanation, Mr. Brushel. Well, that's the thing, see? After he put his letter in the envelope, Mr. Measham sat there searching his desk drawer for something. His desk drawer. Yes, a stamp, a so-called postage stamp. End quote. A stamp, whatever for? Well, to mail his letter, what else? And then, why, yes, I think I saw him put in this letter in this box. Wow, I did not read that correctly. And then, why, yes, I think I saw him put it in his letterbox. Yes, that was the yellow envelope. And he put it in that box. Oh, well, apparently this yellow letter has nothing to do with the case. Oh, how I wish it did. Just think of that, or a suicide note. What a story. Star writes suicide note in front of reporter, falls, end quote. As I was saying, that has nothing to do with this case. That said... Yes, Your Honor? It makes me wonder about the contents of that red envelope. $100,000 is quite a good deal of money. So this is from 7 years ago, yeah? So, am I finished here? Am I finished here? I was thinking of, going home to start writing. I hate to state what should be pretty obvious to anyone, but when you catch the scent of a story, you make that rather unique face. Ah, come on! Attorney has active imagination, little else. End quote. Even I noticed something, and my eyes aren't what they used to be. I'm starting to understand what all this receiving stuff is about. Judge has active imagination. End quote. Please continue with your testimony. Tell us about the scent of a story. Hey, I'm the one asking the questions here, usually. Actually, it took a bit of work to get thumbs up from the interview. Reporter leverages a story, gets his interview. End quote. Story concerned a certain case from 7 years ago. That red envelope probably had something to do with it. Say what you will, but Drew's talent was without compare. So you threatened to go to press with the story. That's how you got your interview? Blackmail? Well, yes. No. I wasn't exactly Something wrong, Mr. Brushel. Look, this is my story. My tidbit. Journalist's info is livelihood. End quote. You see. Well, you have me chatting away in here. What's going on out there? What if some Wally Wordsworth or Sally Scooper gets wind of my story? They could go into press while I'm going to waste. The court feels your pain, Mr. Brushel. Mr. Justice, let's pick up the pace. A certain case 7 years ago. 7 years ago. Our favorite phrase. Ooh, my bracelet is reacting. A certain case 7 years ago? Tell us what case. Let me say one thing, Mr. Attorney, and you can quote me on this. I can't talk about that case. Why not? It's about journalistic pride and staunchness and credibility and connections. Journalist reveals sources over his dead body. End quote. So what'll it be? Gonna strangle me? Dead men tell no tales, Mr. Attorney. He sounds pretty determined not to talk. Our chances of breaking his will aren't looking good. On the one hand, we have your story, and on the other, this letter. What makes you think the two are related? I was just saying it's possible. We'll call it reporter's intuition, end quote. Hey, I say a lot of things. You can pick them all apart? Be my guest. All of them? No. Just incredibly suspicious ones. I see. Anything else to add about Mr. Misham? Maybe that's the one to perceive. His teeth are so big and minty fresh. So normally I look at the face whenever we do these. But it's actually gonna be elsewhere that we're gonna be looking for this one. If, you know, I can, figure out where to... This is the one he's being secretive of. Oops. Why is my bracelet reacting right now? Maybe this is the weird one. Just gonna go up and down his whole entire body. Ah, there it is. Did you see that? This is the sketchy one because we know what Drew's talent is. We know what he was.
Gotcha!
Sweat much, Mr. Brushel? Yes, well, a man can't help his glands, you know. It's more than that. When Mr. Meacham's talent was mentioned, you suddenly began to sweat buckets. You're hiding something about his talent. That's ridiculous. Evidence time. Let's show where Mr. Meacham's true talent lay. Just so happens I have evidence showing the talent mentioned in that letter. It's his painting, right?
Take that!
I feel like I've done the same thing before. I feel like I made that same mistake in the past, like every single time I play this game. This painting was found in Mr. Meacham's This painting was found in Mr. Meacham's studio. There are two problems with this painting. The first is it wasn't painted by Mr. Meacham. The second is that there was another painting in the studio, which looks exactly like this one, except it was only half done. Again, I don't know why presenting that painting didn't work for this point, but I digress. Then we have a letter discussing a payment of $100,000, which suggests a certain business operation. The business of making forgeries. That's all, Your Honor. Everyone, please, everyone! Can we keep this private, please? This is my story, my scoop! Forgery, that's a serious crime. Drew Meacham is known as an artist these days, but there were rumors he dabbled in another kind of art until a few years back. Another art meaning forgery. Drew Meacham was talented, all right. Talented at making precise, detailed fakes. A fact that certain criminal elements were quick to discover. Criminal elements? What? You can't seriously be talking about. Exactly. I'm talking about forging evidence. The rumors started circulating 7 years ago. 7 years ago. So are we to understand that this letter, this payment of $100,000 was for... Exactly. Forged evidence nets tiny profit. End quote. Tidy profit. Excuse me. Order, order, order. Why, it's like our victim was living a double life. This is my chance. So the victim had ties to the criminal world, right? He could have had plenty of enemies we know nothing about.
Objection!
This is my first time hearing of this criminal world. We certainly found no criminal connections when we conducted our investigation.
Objection!
But how do you explain all this money? You have to admit there's a possibility of some illegal activity here.
Objection!
There's no proof tying this letter to our case. Our case was, and remains, simple from the beginning. Only the defendant could have poisoned that mug that night. And you, of course. Hey! The only thing I poison is my pen when I'm writing reviews. Mr. Brushel, your testimony to this point has been quite unreliable. It doesn't speak well of your reporting acumen. What are you talking about? My journalism is rock solid. Journalism so solid you could stand an elephant on it. End quote. In any case, let's hear a summarized recap of your testimony. If we can ascertain the situation in the studio from the recap, the trial is over. Apollo, what's he talking about? The cross-examination showed Mr. Brushel didn't have reason or means to poison him. As long as there's no other suspects, then the killer had to be Vera. That's what. This next testimony is our last chance. Mr. Brushel, your testimony, please. The only other person in the studio that night was the defendant. It was Vera who poured the coffee. She's admitted as much herself. The only thing that touched Drew's lips during the interview was that mug. And nothing left that studio after he died. Nothing. Clearly the only one who could have poisoned him was his daughter. Didn't we just prove that there was something that left the studio? Nice testimony. Clear, succinct, and without room for doubt. Ah, shucks. You really think so? I believe this clarifies the situation that night. Very well, Mr. Justice. You may begin your final cross-examination. Right. So I have one trump card left to play. And I won't let this trial end until I use it.
Hold it!
Not one thing? You're sure? Yep, sure as can be. Well, with one exception. One exception? What? Journalist Spark Brushel does interview. Leave studio. End quote. Come on. It's a joke, get it? Not funny, I know, but still. Did something leave the studio that night? Why does that sound familiar? Where have I heard something like that before? And now we've just proven our witness is a comedian of sorts. I'd like to turn to our defense attorney before returning to the testimony. Do you have any idea what, if anything, might have left the studio that night? Yes. I think one thing might very well have left the studio that night, actually. A certain something that has vanished from the crime scene. By which you mean? Something other than our witness? Of course. Don't tell me. Vera Measham? Believe me, any comic relief I may provide is entirely unintentional. Poor Apollo. Then let's see what you got for us, Mr. Justice. Well, this thing wasn't at the scene of the crime, so I can't show it to you. But I do have evidence that shows how it could have been taken from the scene. Oh, that works.
Take that!
This is the only link between the studio and the outside world. A letterbox. What did Mr. Brushel just tell us? When he entered the studio on the night of the murder, the victim had just finished writing a letter? Yeah, I said that, and yeah, it was true. Furthermore, you went on to tell us he put the letter in a yellow envelope and put it in the letterbox. But that very same letterbox was empty. In other words, that night, the yellow envelope disappeared.
Objection!
Yes, intriguing. So an envelope has disappeared from the scene of this crime. Of course, this changes nothing. Huh? He has a point, Mr. Justice. What we're trying to figure out here is how the poison got into Mr. Measham. It's really important that this envelope the witness says he saw disappeared. Well, if it did disappear, then something did leave the studio that night. That seems very important to me. Very well, then. The witness will add this to his testimony. You got it! I still think this fails to change anything, Hair Forehead. I wouldn't be so sure. The letter disappeared from the crime scene that night. This is exactly the opening I've been looking for. Nothing could be more serious than an envelope disappearing from that studio. And you were hiding that fact from us. Yes, well, actually... I don't argue the possibility that letter disappeared from the studio, but Hair Forehead, isn't there a much more serious question before us? Right, how Mr. Measham was poisoned, I know. Mr. Russell's testimony has changed, which means the facts of the case have too. What he's told us means something entirely different now. I'm starting to think. Just keep thinking, Apollo. Okay, I know, again, the worst enemy of this game is knowing what's going on from previous play. You're sure about that? Well, to be really, really precise, I was busy gobbling mint candies the whole time. One of those candies might have been poisoned. Yet, at the time of the autopsy, no fresh fragrance of mint filled the room. And no mint residue was found. That was a long shot anyway. Don't tell me you're still trying to prove this. You think the victim ate, drank, or otherwise ingested something other than coffee? Well, Mr. Justice, if you have some proof, the possibility is there. I can feel it, just maybe not prove it, not yet. The possibility isn't going to cut it, not now. Mr. Measham ingested that poison via a route other than coffee. I can prove it. Proof is possible. You do understand what we need, yeah? Proof, Hair Forehead, not possibilities. Of course. And Prosecutor Gavin, I hope you understand. I'm ready to give you that proof. What did you say? I have proof of the disappearing envelope. I saw him writing a letter, I did! Which was picked up by the mailman, I assume. Of course, which means that envelope had a stamp on it. As we all know, stamps come with dried glue on the back, because this is an ancient game. In order to use the glue, you have to wet it, by licking the stamp. Objection! I think that was a thing, like a common thing back when this game came out, but here we are. I don't know, I mean, I don't know whether it's how common versus uncommon it is. Anyway. No one worth talking to actually licks stamps in this day and age. Yeah, there you go. Thank you, Clavier. Even if you wanted to talk to him, you couldn't. He's dead, after all. Okay, so he licked the stamp. But wait. How does that explain the atropine on the rim of the coffee mug? If he licked the back of his poisoned stamp, the poison would get on his tongue, yes? What would then happen if you put the coffee mug to his mouth, Those traces on the mug weren't the killer's doing, it was the other way around. What? The coffee mug didn't poison Mr. Measham. Mr. Measham poisoned the coffee mug himself. Order, order, order! But that doesn't... Recall, if you would. Atroquinine is a slow-acting poison, yes? The poison entered his body when he put the stamp on an envelope. But his time wasn't up until the very moment he touched his lips to the cup of joe. You have something to add, Mr. Brushel? No, his nose is picking up another scent. As I believe I mentioned earlier. After he put his letter in the envelope, he's out there searching his desk drawer for something. The stamp. But you know, I don't seem to remember him ever finding one. Maybe he just ran out. Incidentally, we searched the desk drawer at the scene of the crime. There were no stamps. Not a single one. That does pose a problem. How will you prove that the stamp was coated with poison? Actually, I'm glad no other stamps were found. It makes proving the stamp he used was poison possible. Good show, good show. You can't even prove there was a stamp at the scene in the first place. Well, let's hear what the defense has to say anyway. Where's your evidence that proves the existence of this poison stamp? Take that! Well, it certainly is a cute little frame, and by little I mean really little. It was on the victim's desk, Your Honor. Quite empty, as you can see for yourself. I noticed that too during my inspection, so what? Apparently you weren't as observant as you should have been. You see, when you saw this frame, it was missing something quite important. Missing something? Yes, a pale bluish stain on the inside of the frame. Atroquinine residue. What? Why wasn't I told about this? The frame was only 2 inches square. The face of the frame is even smaller. Maybe an inch wide at most. You aren't saying. Oh, but I am. Tell me, what fits in such a small frame? A commemorative stamp, perhaps? Order! Order! The poison stamp was in this frame? Impossible. Prosecutor Kavlin. Why would he put something like that on his desk? Don't tell me he had it there so he could commit suicide when the mood struck. You know, can I say something? I had a thought, see? Oh, Mr. Rushel, please stop jittering around like that. The victim was a forger, right? There's a lot of money in that line of work. Forger forges friends, makes enemies too. End quote. So the poison stamp might have been a murder weapon, aimed at him. Objection! Oh, rich. That's rich. Leave the ridiculous flights of fancy to the Gavinier song lyrics, please. Finally, something we agree on. The stamp was a murder weapon? Nonsense. Murder is simple business. Who would go to such lengths? No one. Oh, I disagree. Come again? Recall, if you would, the victim's reclusive lifestyle. Drew Misham hid from the world, he avoided meetings. His only contact with the outside world was the mail. The mail? Now, if you wanted to kill someone you couldn't meet, but you knew read letters, a stamp would be the perfect weapon. Ridiculous! Where's your proof? I want proof! Show us evidence that this poison stamp was sent to him as a murder weapon. I might not have evidence, per se, but things are finally starting to come together. What is it, Apollo? Your fists are trembling. I think I know what happened. I don't believe it, but I can see it. I think I know how Mr. Misham was killed. Oh, fill us in, Mr. Justice. A certain piece of evidence points to the truth, Your Honor. I can show you how someone with the intent to kill sent Mr. Misham the stamp of death. This is so exciting. If you recall, this says, send the receipt with the enclosed stamp. Take that! Isn't this the envelope? The one from 7 years ago? Think about the text of the letter again. There were 2 pages in the envelope. This is page 1. And this is page 2. I want to draw your attention to one phrase in particular. Send in the enclosed envelope with the enclosed stamp within 3 days. The enclosed stamp, Your Honor. Ah! In other words, if I have this straight, the stamp, poison, on the stamp, lick, lick, gasp, end quote. Now, what if he had done exactly as the letter asked? He would sign the document, put it in the envelope, and put the stamp on it, right? Then he would put it in his letterbox. 15 minutes wouldn't have elapsed between affixing the stamp and mailing the letter. But the clock started ticking, and when the time came, he drew his last breath. And the murder weapon would be taken away from the scene. Quite conveniently, thanks to the postal system. Such a splendid imagination you have, Hair Forehead. Let me confirm one thing with you, if I might. So this poison stamp was inside this envelope from 7 years ago. Yeah? Is that what you'd have us believe? Really? Well, it's a little bit of a stretch, but there is a possibility. Yes, a very small possibility. How small, I wonder? A poison stamp in this envelope? A stamp that then became the murder weapon? How do you intend to prove this seeming coincidence? Well, it was 7 years ago, and we don't even know who sent that letter. And your answer is silence. I see very well. I move to... It's not nice to pick on the Fraulein Clavier. Ah, Emma! Well, like my Christoph Gavin impression? Did I sound like him? Don't quit your day job. That was terrifying. Don't you have a crime scene to be looking after, Fraulein Detective? Someone had to come dig you all out of the mess you're making of this case. Mess? You know, none of this would have happened if you just trusted in science a little more. You can find out if that stamp was in the envelope. Easy. Care to explain yourself, Fraulein Detective? Glare at me all you want, but science is on my side. It's all in the residue, right? That's right, into the poison detection spray. Produce the red envelope at once. You can open it to the authority of the court. Spray, 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 spray. There we go. That was the only, open area. I figured that was where it was. I didn't actually remember it. I just figured. Oh, well, would you look at that? No mistaking it. That's a troquinine residue. The power of science! I don't believe it. A murder weapon from the past. Now, 7 years later, it bears its fangs at last.
Objection!
Absolutely outrageous. Tell me why. Why didn't this murder take place 7 years ago? Well, there's one possibility. Maybe Mr. Measham figured it out. Figured what out? He realized that the person who sent that letter wanted him dead, so he sent his reply with a different stamp. And put his decisive evidence in a frame. You're still here. Can I make a statement here on the record? I, Spark Racer Toothbrush, will claim this scoop as mine. Drew Measham killed in cold blood. By sender of 7-year-old letter. End quote. No, but maybe something more succinct. Star falls after 7-year delay. End quote. Order, order, order. I see no room for argument here. Though I admit this is all coming as quite a shock. To think that the murder weapon reached his mouth after 7 years. Stamp his ticket straight to afterlife. End quote. Uh-oh, I think the witness is a bad influence on our judge. I see no need for further debate on this matter. The sender of that letter 7 years ago could hardly have been our defendant. Apollo! I think we just won. Very well. This court finds a defendant.
Objection!
Is this the bright future of our legal system? Prosecutor Gavin. A ticket to the afterlife from 7 years ago. Tickets for Gavinier's shows are invalid after 2 weeks. But it doesn't make sense any other way. It boggles my mind that so many people haven't noticed this. There's a fatal contradiction in Herr Forehead's claim. A contradiction? A poison stamp was placed in this envelope 7 years ago, whereupon it was framed until now. If that's the case, then why would Drew Measham have done what he did? Emma explained that. He must have realized it was poisoned. Therein lies the rub. 7 years ago, the forger Drew Measham seized a trap and put the stamp in the frame. I do not debate this, but this begs the question. Why 7 years later did he use that stamp on the night of murder? Surely you don't mean to suggest that Mr. Measham simply forgot. He put the murder weapon in a frame on his desk for 7 years and forgot? You expect us to believe he sprang the trap on himself? I mean, that's a fair question. Absolutely fair question. While I admit this is all quite shocking myself, it does seem highly unlikely that he would fall afoul of the trap. That had been sitting on his desk for 7 years. Apollo? I don't think we're winning anymore. I'm glad to see we're all back in the real world now. Welcome back to reality. We've been waiting for you.
Objection!
Okay, then how do you explain the poison stamp that was in this envelope? Poison stamp? Where exactly is this poison stamp again? Have you brought it to court for us? See no proof that such a thing ever existed.
Objection!
What about the acroquinine residue, huh? Oh, I agree. That does seem to be acroquinine residue. But Herr Forehead, it's certainly no stamp. Yeah, but even if your precious poison stamp did exist, Drew Measham never would have used it. That is all. Ark. I believe we've come to a conclusion. Again. Apollo! Were we wrong the whole time? I can't believe it. The poison traces match up. It can't be coincidence. I'd like to bring some closure to this issue sometime this year, Mr. Justice. Yes, Your Honor? Let's review the facts and see where we stand. 7 years ago, Drew Measham received a red envelope. There were traces of the poison acroquinine on the document inside that envelope. A similar trace was also found at the crime scene, on this tiny picture frame. The defense has indicated the possibility of a yellow envelope. An envelope that left the scene of the crime with a poison stamp on it. Yes, but even if this envelope contained a poison stamp, and Drew Measham, knowing this, put it in a frame, he never would have used that stamp. I'm afraid you're right. Which means there is a fatal flaw in the defense's case. I haven't been on the wrong track this whole time, I'm sure of it. The traces of acroquinine, the envelope, the frame, and Drew Measham's mysterious death. They're all connected somehow. Well, Mr. Justice, do you have a conclusion for us? The defense stands by its case, Your Honor. We've seen that the logical outcome of the evidence makes no sense, which means that one of our clues must be a fake. Ah, a fake clue. Fascinating. And if we find this fake, your wild fantasies will prove quite reasonable, yeah? The fake clue that's thrown us off the poisonous trail is none other than... Is it Drew because of the assumption of why... Like, because the problem is, why did he use it if he knew that it was poisoned? So Drew is the issue. The victim was a fake clue. I'm afraid I don't understand. I'll explain. We have an envelope, a frame, and a mug linked by poison. That all makes sense. What doesn't make sense is the victim himself.
Objection!
Congratulations, you've completely lost me. So the fake evidence is none other than the master of fake himself, the forger. Makes a good story, I'll give you that. The fake clue. Fakes. Forgeries. Ah. I know that face. That's the I just had an idea face. I don't know if I'm right, but I'm going with it anyway. What if our forger is the fake? Come again. 7 years ago, our forger sniffed a trap and stepped aside. 7 years passed. Now the forger stumbles into that very same trap and dies. Why? That's what I want to know. Because the forger who was killed was a fake. Here we are again. The victim was a fake. One forger smelled the trap. One forger fell into the trap. Whoa, okay, wait, hold on. The cadence was all off on that. One forger smelled the trap. One forger fell into the trap. That's 2 forgers, and one of them was a fake. Order! Order! So you are telling us that Drew Measham, the victim, was a fake. Well, if he was the fake, who was the real forger? You'd better not be claiming there was some kind of switcheroo. I'm afraid you're going to have to back up your story. Mr. Justice, show us just who the real Drew Measham was. If Drew Measham wasn't the real forger, there's only one other person it could have been. Understood, Your Honor. Forger Drew Measham was himself a forgery. The real forger was the only other person that could have been.
Take that!
There can be only one explanation, really. The real identity of the forger known as Drew Measham is none other than his only daughter, Vera Measham. Order! Mr. Justice, this is going out on a limb even for you. I kind of agree. I mean, Vera, a forger? Let's consider it before you write it off entirely. If you look at the paintings in the studio, one fact becomes quite clear. Forgery has been taking place in that studio for quite some time. The forger wasn't caught in the trap 7 years ago. This can only mean that the one who was caught in the trap wasn't the forger. actually, that does make a certain kind of sense. One more thing. Only 2 sets of fingerprints were found on the forger's studio. Drew Measham's and Vera Measham's. If we know that Drew Measham wasn't the forger, that leaves only one possibility by process of elimination. The forger was Vera Measham. Well... Is this supposed to be my sham? Like, Drew my sham? Oh well. Fascinating! Vera Measham. Vera my sham. You've been paying attention to the trial so far. Let's just ask her and be done with it, shall we? Who are you? Who is the forger, Drew Measham? Aw. Was that an expression of emotion I saw on her face? She's staring holes into Prosecutor Gavin's face. I'm used to being stared at by Fraulein's, believe me. Though they usually talk to me, too. Tell us, were you the one who forged those works of art? Yes. So the forger, Drew Measham, was you! Yes, it was me. What?! The court was in an uproar, and it wasn't coming down. We had to break for a 10-minute recess. The plot thickens. So, I guess the current theory is she sensed the trap, her dad fell for it. Meanwhile, she's the true forger, and so now we have actually access to talking to the forger and what is going on. That's also fun. It's nice that she's talking, though. You know, it's good for us when our clients actually talk to us. You know, because that has a tendency of not happening for a surprising amount of times. Anyway, so yeah, stick around, stay tuned. We're gonna find out what's gonna go down with all of this in the second part of the case, second part of the trial. Not case, because the whole this was the second part of the case. Second part of this trial ladder, where we're going to, I guess, talk with Vera and get to the bottom of things. So, I'll talk to you guys then.